check this out. Dear Ryan Freeman, congratulations. On behalf of the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences, it is our pleasure to inform you Invisible City Podcast is the 22nd annual Webby Award winner in the podcast and digital audio, best sound design and original music score category. See that right there, best sound design. All right, so in this video, I want to show you guys how I process my vocals for, I guess, an award-winning podcast. If we can do this, so can you. Check it out. So this was the episode that I submitted to the Webbies that they judged for best sound design and for music score. And so the award wasn't actually just for one particular episode, is for the podcast as a whole. But they recommended to send in your best sounding episode or what you thought was the best sounding episode that you'd produced. So I really enjoyed this episode. And so let's just get into it. I'll play a little bit of it for you.
It's an early spring morning in downtown Toronto. It's 4 a.m. and I'm standing at the foot of one of downtown Toronto's many glass towers. It is overcast and foggy, and it's raining birds.
Yeah, so this episode of Invisible City is called Urban Birdman, and it features the host, Jennifer Keesmaat. She's the former chief planner of the city of Toronto, and also this guy named Michael. And Michael just has a really wonderful voice. So I use this mic that I use for our videos. It's the Electro Voice RE20. It's a great podcasting mic. I highly, highly recommend it. If you're just starting out, I definitely recommend this.
My name is Michael Mazur. I'm Executive Director of FLAP Canada, otherwise known as Fatal Light Awareness Program Canada. We're a registered nonprofit, and we focus on the issue of bird collisions with buildings. Within this issue, there are two.
So Michael and his team, they're doing very valuable work here in the city and across North America. So it was great having him on the podcast. But basically, this is the exact same vocal processing that I do for all of our vocals across films, podcasts, and also for vocals in our music and for singing. So any good recording engineer or mixing engineer, they're going to tell you that you have to get the recording right at the source. There's only so much you can really do in post-production. So it is very valuable to, have a nice sounding environment to record your podcast in, or for any vocals of that matter. If you are going out onto a location, try to find like a quiet room that's not too echoey or reverby. So yeah, I can't stress enough. It's very important to get this right. Right from the source. So I just want to quickly point out before we go any further, I don't really do any mastering other than a light limiter on the final master output. There's more or less virtually no limiting. This is just so any of those peaks that do occur, either from the voice on top of the music or if they're having a conversation, voices are kind of overlapping. You just don't want there to be any digital distortion. So just add a light limiter. That's all you need. You can use the limiter that's native in your DAW, or you can use a third-party limiter. I use the L2 by Waves Audio. Okay, so this is how I process my vocals. I make sure to get a nice clean signal. I don't record too loudly because you can always boost the volume in post, but you can never bring it down if it does distort if you record your vocals too loud. So better play it safe than sorry, really. So what I do is I clean up the vocals here, and I'll just play it for you so you can see how quietly I actually record it.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species. And the particular distinguishing feature.
So it's between minus 12 and minus 24 dB, maybe even a little quieter than that.
Which enables them.
Really, you should know your talent. If they're a loud talker or if they have these large influxes in their voice, you will want to record quite quietly. And you can kind of make up for the difference in volumes with a compressor and limiter and things like that, which I'll show you. So yeah, I get a nice clean recording from the start. And what I always do is I want to clean it up a little bit, just in case if there are like any cars driving by outside of the studio, or if there's like your air conditioning running, there's like a slight hum. More or less, you will always run into a slight hum, or even like an electrical hum. I know a lot of people don't really think about that, but sometimes you do hear a little So it is important to try to isolate that and clean that up. So what I do is you just want to find a quiet spot in your vocals. And then for any noise reduction plugin, there will always be a noise profile learning button. So this just allows the plugin to create a profile of the hum. So you'll play it and then you'll hit learn. So once you've done that, you can just adjust the threshold and the noise reduction accordingly. So I'll throw that at the very beginning of my vocal processing chain on basically every vocal. And then I'll compress it after that.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species, and the particular distinguishing
And so what you want to do here is you want it to sit somewhere between 0 and -3 dB, -4, give or take, just because you don't really want to crush your vocal in the compressor. To me, it just doesn't sound that good. You do want it to sound fairly natural, very conversational. So yeah, don't squish your vocals.
Passerines make up over half of all birds.
So I'm using the Universal Audio plugin, the Teletronics LA28 Legacy model. It is by far my favorite compressor to use pretty much on anything.
Passerines make up over half.
So yeah, just fine tune it.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species, and the particular distinguishing feature of them is that they have 3 toes.
And what you can do, you just adjust your gain accordingly. And as you can see, I am slightly distorting, but that is all right, because that's what a limiter is for. So I'm doing very slight limiting.
Passerines make up over.
My out ceiling is always -0.1, never 0, always slightly under, or 0.2. And then just 1 decibel of limiting.
Passerines make up over.
So once I do that, I do a dehummer at the very beginning on the signal. So it's like fairly dry. Then I'll compress it and then I'll EQ it after the compressor, and then I do a limiting. So this is my secret, well, I guess not so secret anymore, but it is my EQ. So I pretty much put this EQ curve on every single vocal that we do, if that be something for the podcast, something for a film, a voiceover, for a commercial, really anything. This is the curves that they're like my go-to, and I just adjust it accordingly depending on the talent's voice and where their voice sits in the frequency spectrum.
Passerines make up over half of all.
So I'll just quickly go through this EQ and I'll EQ it from scratch just so you can see my process and everything that I'm doing here. So you'll want to have the analyzer on so you can visualize your EQ, so you can visualize the waveform coming in.
Passerines make up over.
So you want to chop off all of this in here. You don't need it.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species, and the particular distinguishing feature of them.
Yeah, so I'll want to take out all that low end frequency that really just is unnecessary information. So I'll take that out so you don't get any rumbles, or if someone's speaking into the mic, sometimes you got a little, it punches through and it sounds very unpleasant to the ear. So I'll take all of that out. And then the next thing that I do is I find on pretty much every single mic, if that be a condenser mic, a boom mic, really any mic, I find in this frequency range is where the voice will sound very roomy, almost kind of like boxed in. So I'll usually pull that out and I'll show you what I mean.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species, and the particular.
So you want to pull that out, and it really cleans it up quite nicely, actually.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species, and the particular distinguishing feature of them is that they have 3 toes pointing forward and 1 backward, which enables them to perch. Thus, they are known as perching birds or.
So once you've done that, it's sounding quite nice. But what I'll do is I'll give it a little boost down here. So this is So this is one of my favorite things to do. This really gives like a nice body to the vocal. It makes it sound more conversational. For me, a good sounding podcast is if it sounds like you are sitting right there beside that person listening to them talk to you, right? If you're sitting in a room with someone, in their chest cavity, it projects noise, right? So I find you often lose that kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like hollowness or deepness or like the bass of a voice, and any voice really. You can't lose that in recordings a little bit. So what I do is I always boost that down here. So it gives like a nice full and thickness to the voice.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species. And the particular distinguishing feature of them is that they have 3 toes pointing forward and 1 backward, which enables them to perch. Thus, they are known as perching birds, or less accurately.
And then what I do is I just give it a little high shelf. Once again, just depending on your talent's voice, you can boost it or whatever you need to do.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species. And the particular distinguishing feature of them is that they have 3 toes pointing forward.
So it's sounding pretty good to me. And you might notice I'm getting like a little bit of this. So sometimes I'll throw a de-esser on the vocal chain, but I won't be doing that today.
Passerines make up over half of all bird species. And the particular...
So another thing that's very important to think about, which I feel like it kind of gets overlooked sometimes when it comes to music production, working on your audio for your films, and especially working on the audio for your podcast, is you always have to think about how people consume your media, right? So people will listen to it on their headphones, like little ear pods. They'll listen to it on their phone, like just off of their phone. They'll listen to it in a car. They'll listen to it on computer speakers, laptop speakers. So all these different things. So you really need to take all of those listening environments and devices into consideration when you are processing really any audio. And I find a lot of people don't really think about that too much. So what I've done just from all of my experience over the years is I've really fine-tuned my processing chain. And so I know what sounds good on what. So if you're just starting out and you're doing your own mixing, if that be, for a podcast, for a film, if you're an artist and you're making a song, you really need to A/B test your mixes on different listening devices. It's very important. You want like a nice rounded out sound, so it sounds great on multiple different listening devices. So EQing the voice is the most important part of mixing your vocals for your podcast. So let me just play you Jen's voice and then I'll let it go into Michael's voice so you can see how my EQ curve actually works on both voices. And then you just want to fine tune it, like I said earlier, accordingly to your talent's voice and kind of where, that what I was talking about, like where the chesty, for lack of a better term, for where that chestiness in the voice kind of lies, around 100 to 150 hertz. And then also where that roominess of their voice and where it sounds like a little boxed in, a little muffled, where that kind of sits. And I'm actually quite generous on that cut there. So check it out.
Evolutionary time scales. Now, a key player in drawing attention to this issue is an organization called FLAP.
My name is Michael Mazier. I'm Executive Director of FLAP Canada, otherwise known as Fatal Light Awareness Program Canada. We're a registered nonprofit, and we focus on the issue of bird collisions with buildings. Within this issue, there are 2.
So as you can see in here, it sounds pretty good. And I'm using virtually the exact same EQ curves on both voices. Once again, just slightly fine tune it. So I think if you do something similar to what I've done here, it will really help out your vocal processing and it'll sound really good. So if you have any comments or questions, just leave me a comment down below. Please hit that thumbs up. It really helps me out a lot. And yeah, thank you for watching. I believe in you. I know you can do this. If I can do this, you can do it too. So best of luck. I upload at least once a week, so subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss the next video. Also check out Lossless TV. It's our cinematic short documentary channel. This is where I upload my films, which features all original music. I really love connecting with people on Instagram and seeing their work, so be sure to follow me at It's Ryan Freeman. Thanks again for watching.